The following message is from Hillsdale Baptist Church in Advance, North Carolina. Learn more about Hillsdale by visiting their website, www.hillsdalebaptistchurch.org. Thanks for listening. Now here is the message.
All right, guys and gals, let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll start a little bit. I was expecting a few others, but we're going to go ahead and jump on into it. We're going to be looking at Revelation, but if you've already looked at the page, we're only covering one verse tonight. And I did my best. I mapped it out, and then it was going to end up being like 3 pages of notes. So I said, if I want to do this in a reasonable time, I'm going to try to scale it back to 1 page. So that meant 1 verse. So we'll go from there. So we're going to jump into the 5th trumpet tonight, but let's review the 4th trumpet. Now, your review questions, when we looked at last week, we looked at 4 trumpets, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Today we look at the 5th, but the first 4 trumpets are what? Literal events that will affect the whole earth. So it was important for me to say that because sometimes we can get very allegorical, we can get in a world to where it's like maybe if, when we start thinking things as just basically metaphors, it kind of messes with the interpretation. We want to see this when we read this as literal events. And then after we read when we got to the end of the 4th trumpet, an eagle comes out, and the eagle is going to say something, and that's number 2. The most threatening word used by prophets would be what? Woe. And why is that? When a prophet would have said that in the Old Testament or New Testament, why would woe be such a dangerous word from a prophet? Because judgment is coming. Woe to you. Judgment is coming. Anytime you read any of the Psalms or you read any of the Old Testament prophets, you would see woe to a certain city or a woe to a person. That simply means judgment to that person. So as we come into chapter 9, we find ourselves arriving in a period of time yet not to come. So it's a future time, and we call this time the Great Tribulation, that last 7 years. And specifically, we can say this is going to be within the last 3.5 years. We can safely assure that. Still don't know exactly the timeline per se, but we do, from the way things roll out, we can assume that we are in that last 3.5 years. And we also probably can think that it's also going to be toward the end of the 3.5 years, because they're getting closer and closer and closer, but the judgments are going to keep going. So in the future, Satan will serve God's purpose by being permitted to launch another deadly attack, another attack upon the human race. So so as we come to chapter 9, what happens is the focus of the judgments don't come from heaven anymore. They're actually going to come from hell. We're getting into the scary parts of what will happen in this last time. And for me, as I read this growing up and read this as a young adult and now reading it even more as a pastor, this is scary stuff. This is extremely scary stuff, and some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is going to prove to you how scary of a time it will be for people alive during this time. So like I said earlier, chapter 8 ends with the eagle saying, "Woe, woe, woe," because 4 trumpets are down, but 3 are still left, is what the eagle says. So each of the first 4 trumpets affect the physical universe in some way, but with the sounding of the 5th trumpet, the focus will shift from the physical to the spiritual realm. So we're going to start seeing an element that humans will not be able to comprehend. So seeing things come from the sky, they know what that is. Seeing mountains move, scary, but it's still physical world. Seeing oceans rage, they can register with it. But when we get into these last 3 trumpets and we get into the bowl judgments, we're going to see that we're now touching on a spiritual aspect that's going to open up a reality of the people living who have tried to push the spiritual world out are going to see full-fledged spiritual life coming in. So we're just going to look at 1 verse tonight. And next week we'll hopefully get most of the rest of the trumpet judgment done. So the 5th angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from heaven to earth. The key for the shaft to the abyss was given to him. So that's our 1 verse tonight. And we really focus on that first phrase, I saw a star had fallen from heaven to earth. And this is number 1. The star was not an inanimate piece of celestial matter. That's what we've seen before. So on the other judgments, things have come. Stars, we've actually seen the word star being used to emphasize something astronomical coming out. But this, it's not a celestial matter, but it's an angelic being. It's an angelic being. In my studies before ever being a pastor, I would read this stuff, and this is where I would just kind of just put the Bible down and go, weird. Because you just can't comprehend this. I'm going to do my best to help us do that. So again, this star isn't an inanimate piece of celestial matter, but it's an angelic being. So this is a different star because it says, and we know that this is not a star because a key to the abyss will be given to, and it's a pronoun, him. So stars aren't going to be named him or hers. So this is going to be a person or a something. But I like this commentary. It says, this star is what we like to think of like an actual star, a movie star, an athletic star, a music star. It's going to be something unique and something special about this one. The same kind of person, some angelic person, who would be identified in the terminology of like Job 38:7, which says, where were you when I established the earth? Talking to Job. Tell me if you have understanding. Who fixed its dimension? Certainly you know. Who stretched out a measure line across it? What supports its foundations, or who laid its cornerstone? And specifically verse 7. While the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So when we see the use here, and we've seen it throughout the Old Testament, when God is referring to angels, he will refer to those angels as stars. And the first real example of that is the Job text where he says, when the world was created, the angels were singing. The sons of God were shouting for joy. So those are the angels there. So that we know that this will be an angelic being that's going to be receiving this star. So this star is from the spiritual dimension. This is not from a physical thing. It's not going to be a physical person, human. This will be a physical, spiritual creature. So then the question comes down to, who is the fallen star? Who is the fallen star? Who do you think it is? I won't tell you the answer yet. Any guesses? Satan. Again, this is one that whenever I started reading this a long time ago, I still was like, what is this? Who could this person be? And so tonight I want to show you who I think is probably the most likely choice. So the star has already fallen before the key was given to him. So that's one of the key components there, is that when we look at the context of the grammar, this is not an angel who was in heaven who was given the star or given the key to come down. This star had already presently fallen, and because it's in the perfect tense, it's a continued action. So he had fallen and has remained fallen. So that's one of the key components. So the star, it says, which has fallen to the earth, this star is perfect tense, like I said. So the one leading thought is that this star is Satan, the day star, the son of the morning who fell. Now there are other ideas too. So the other commentators will argue that it could be another angelic being, because we've already seen the presence angels. So they would argue that, but there's not a lot of evidence to point to that. Just if we look hermeneutically, where we look at the phraseology that's used in the Bible. Some will identify this as some angelic person who is yet to be identified. So it could be an angel, or people will think that it's a demon, or we see even later in this same trumpet judgment, we'll see that this might be the angel of the abyss, because he's going to be named also. But when it comes down to it, the way that one phrase is written is that this one has already fallen. I have saw a star that had fallen from heaven to earth. So we have to recognize that they started in heaven and now they've come to earth. So with that in mind, we go back to, let's look at Satan's origins, or his origins to earth. And that would take us to Isaiah 14. So Isaiah 14, we see in verses 12 through 15, shining morning star, how have you fallen from the heavens? You destroyer of nations, you have been cut down to the ground. You said to yourself, I will ascend to the heavens, and I will set my throne above the stars of God. So again, stars referencing angels. I'll be the head angel. I will sit on the mount of the God's assembly in the remotest parts of the north. I will ascend above the highest clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you will be brought down to Sheol, into the deepest regions of the pit. So you're starting to see some terminology that we're going to use in the fifth judgment, or the fifth trumpet, stated here. We also know in Luke 10:18, Jesus references Satan's fall. It's a very short verse. He just says, he said to them, I watched Satan fall from heaven like lightning. So again, this key, or this angelic star that we're talking about, is one that has fallen. And we have two very good references already, and there's multiple ones more that point to this is a reference linguistically to Satan himself. So number 3, the fall of Satan described in verse 1 was not his original rebellion. So this is not a defining, this is his first fall. So the fall of Satan described in the first verse is not his original rebellion. This would be a reference to actually his second rebellion. So he rebelled first, and so the first time Satan was thrown down is referenced in Revelation 12:4, when Satan and a third of the stars, which are angels, were cast down to earth. So that's Isaiah 14, that's Luke 10, those references we said earlier. But then number 4, Satan may have been banished from heaven, but he retained access to God's presence. This was one of the concepts that have been hard for me to grasp over my time studying, but this really points out how Satan actually can work. So, for example, Revelation 12:7-9 says this, Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels also fought, but he could not prevail, and there was no place for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was thrown out, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the one who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels with him. And then we can go back to Job again for another reference here. One day the sons of God, those are angels, came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. So what we see in that is we see how Satan, even though he was cast to the earth, he still had the ability in order to go back to heaven for the presence of God. So the Lord asked Satan, so this is verse 7 of Job, Where have you come from? From roaming through the earth, Satan answered, and walking all around it. And the Lord said to Satan, Have you considered my servant Job? No one else on earth is like him, a man perfect in integrity, who fears God and turns away from evil. Though he and the angels who fell with him were banished from heaven, Satan retains access to God's presence, where he actually accuses the brethren. We see that he does that. That's Revelation 12:10 to be specific. So we see there, Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, The salvation and the power and the kingdom of God and the authority of his Christ have now come, because the accuser of the brothers and sisters who accused them before our God day and night has been thrown down. So he's been cast to the earth. During the tribulation, he and his demons host will have an unsuccessful battle with Michael and the holy angels, and as a result of their defeat, they'll be permanently cast down to the earth. And since Satan was thrown out as a permanent occupant of heaven, he still can go back and visit. So can the demons, until that fight in Revelation 12 where they're all cast down on the earth. So at some point in time in the tribulation time, all those angels in the air engaged in war with the holy angels and Satan himself are thrown to the earth, so that the number of demons in the earth is multiplied massively. And that's the emphasis I want to point out before we can get to verse 2 and the rest of it, is that at this point in time, there are no demons, fallen angels, in heaven or in the air. They are all on the earth. So as of right now, there are demons on earth, but they're also still commuting back and forth up to heaven, wherever that might be. They're still, so not the whole force of Satan is not presently here on earth, because it's a spiritual realm. We can't see it. They might all be here, they might all be up there, but somehow they're divided up. But as of at this point in time, they're all going to come back down. So number 5, to make the judgment on earth more intense, all freed demons will be unleashed on the earth. That's what makes the 5th trumpet so scary, is that now you have demented, powerful beings. Because remember, we've talked about how powerful angels have been so far, to where like we saw them stand at the 4 corners of the world and stop the wind. We've seen them also be able to do stopping celestial things from happening in the sky. We've seen them do all these things, and now those beings will be set free here on earth. And all of them. Absolutely all of them. But it only gets worse, because the key of the shaft to the abyss was given to him. The key to the shaft of the abyss was given to him. Number 6, the Lord gave the star, which we will say is Satan, the key to the bottomless pit, depending on your translation, abyss. So the Lord gave him the key to the abyss. The term for bottomless is abu sosos, which is where we get the word abyss. And it's used 7 times in Revelation, and it always refers to the abode of fallen spirits, the abode of demons, the prison where demons are kept incarcerated. So anytime we see that word pit, we're looking at, and in the New Testament, we're looking at that being this place where the demons are held captive. So number 7, God, at his own discretion, has chosen throughout history to incarcerate certain demons. That's one concept that was always kind of lost on me, is that there are not only demons around in the skies and the powers that be and on earth, but there are also some horrible demons who are locked up in this pit. And to reference that more and to understand that, that's the reason why I put 2 Peter on your paper today. It's because 2 Peter gives us an illustration of this. For if God didn't spare the angels who sinned, but cast them into hell and delivered them into chains of utter darkness to be kept forever. Cast them into hell. It's the participle derived from the Greek noun tardis. So the word is interesting because that Tartarus is actually from Greek mythology. And so Tartarus in Greek mythology, that word refers to a subterranean place lower than the grave where the most wicked and rebellious beings were sent to receive the worst and the most severe punishment. So Peter chose that term from Greek mythology with which his readers would be familiar. Because Peter, unlike Paul, is going to be ministering to Jews, but he's also going to have the opportunity to minister to Gentiles. So he's going to be trying to use terminology that they would be aware of and they would know outside of spiritual world, but mythology world. And so Tardis, just read that. Tardis was the name used in Greek literature for the place where the most sinners, those who offended the gods personally, went to death and were punished. The place where God keeps demons imprisoned is actually different from the imaginary place of Greek mythology. Yet the use of the term Tartarus does seem to convey the idea that because of the horrendous of their sin, God has imprisoned certain fallen angels in such a place of severe torment and isolation. So when the Holy Spirit wanted to express hell, the Holy Spirit would express vernacular that would be known to the people. And a good example of that is Jesus. Jesus spoke about hell too, but when he spoke, he used the word Gehenna. And to the Jews, what that meant is they knew that was the city dump, where the ever-burning city dump, where the flame never ended, where garbage and filth and worms and all that vivid stuff would be known. So Jesus picked the word out of the Jewish mind and the culture, and here Peter plucks it out of the Gentile comprehension to describe the most terrible, lowest pit of torment and punishment and incarceration, the lowest of hells. So then the question comes down to, who are the angels, who are the demons who are actually in hell? That's the scary part. because they all were cast to earth as punishment. But then there are more angels who are more, let's call them demons, that were even cast not just from earth or from heaven to earth, but from earth to hell. That's even more scary. So number 8, the demons incarcerated in the abyss are undoubtedly the most wicked, vile, and perverted of all the fallen angels. They are the most wicked, vile, and perverted of all the fallen angels. Right, yeah, they are waiting for, they're waiting to be unleashed. So there is a key that is given. And again, Jude 1:6-7 tells us, and the angels who did not keep their own position, but abandoned their proper dwelling. So this is explaining how they were chosen, or how they were selected in order to go to hell. So Job 1:6-7. And the angels who did not keep their own position, but abandoned their proper dwelling, he was kept in eternal chains and deep darkness for the judgment on the great day. Likewise, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns committed sexual immorality and perversions, and serve an example by undergoing the punishments of eternal fire. So this passage describes certain fallen angels who left the angelic realm to indulge in sexual sins with humans, just as the men of Sodom and Gomorrah attempted to engage in perverted sex with angels. So they left their spiritual realm, what they were confined to, and started doing things that were against what God would have allowed them to do. And so that leads us back to, so 1 Peter reveals when the angelic sin actually occurred. It was in the time of Noah. More specifically, Peter writes, for Christ also suffered for sin once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring to you God. He was put to death in the flesh, but made alive by the Spirit, in which he was also went and made proclamation to the spirits in prison, who in the past were disobedient, when God patiently waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared. In it, a few that ate right were saved through water. So we see that there were several angels, several demons, who were cast to hell during that time right before Noah, specifically Genesis 6. So if you remember the study that I did back in the start, this was a couple years ago, when we looked at Genesis specifically, everything leading up to the flood, we found in Genesis 6, 1-4, it says, when mankind began to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God. Have you heard that reference already? When we were talking about, we saw when we looked back, we said it was the mornings, it was the stars were singing, and the sons of God were shouting for joy. So when the sons of God saw that the daughters of mankind were beautiful, that they took any they chose as wives for themselves. And the Lord said, my spirit will not remain with mankind forever, because they are corrupt. Their days will be 100 years. The Nephilim were on earth born in those days, and afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of mankind, who bore children to them, they were the powerful men of old, the famous men. So these were the angels or demons that were cohabitating with people to produce a demon race. That was nasty to God. That was vile. That was outside the realm. And because of that, they deserved to go to hell. And so in the flood, they went to hell. God sent them.
So when you're reading that, you say sons of God. Is that the demons, or is that the other group?
It would be the ones that would be on the face. Because when we did this study, there were two ways to interpret this terminology. One way to interpret it is, which both can be right, but the one way is to interpret like I just did. These would be the demons who were cast down. And the worship, the sons, the people who were living during that time were so corrupt that they started to worship and started wanting to be possessed, wanting to have these relationships with these fallen angels. And these fallen angels, seeking power, seeking worship, allow themselves to coerce these women and started cohabitating with them and starting to possess and starting to produce more. So basically and then the second interpretation is, which is similar, is that the men would be worshiping these demons. They would be possessed by these demons, and then they would go impregnate their wives or women, and so they would be producing these demon-possessed children. Because angels, the reason why I say that is because angels don't have gender and they don't have the ability to reproduce. So what that means is that these men would be possessed by the demons, possessed by these angels, and they themselves would be the ones that would be creating these Nephilim. They're the ones that are creating these possessed children.
Now also when you were reading there, for a moment I thought you were reading the Apostles' Creed.
No.
Is it similar to the Apostles' Creed, where we always stumble over that part where Jesus went to hell, and it's always confusing to me.
I did read that. That was 1 Peter, I think, or
First Peter?
yeah, I think it was 1 Peter. I think it was where he preached to 1 Peter 3, because it pointed to that after Jesus died, he went to the place that these demons were. And he proclaimed, hey, look, I'm alive. Hey, look, Satan didn't kill me. Hey, look, your judgment's coming.
So that's let me make sure I'm on the right track. So that explains, I may be wrong here, the Apostles' Creed.
Yes.
Okay, because that little passage, especially charismatic churches or people on the radio or television, they use this verse all the time. And they talk about how Christ went to hell, and I never can really figure it out.
It's the part where he says that he died and after death went and proclaimed the gospel to those who are in hell and then resurrected 3 days later. And I used to have it memorized, don't have it memorized anymore. But yeah. It's still iffy. I don't like saying that Christ went to hell. But the Bible is very clear, though, that he went somewhere and he proclaimed the gospel somewhere where spirits are. Right. Yes. Right. So
And it's in 1 Peter 3.
1 Peter 3.
So, I mean, you can't
Right.
go against that.
Very true. Very true. Mm-hmm.
Even children in the Old Testament. But if you think that Satan was trying to corrupt the DNA so there wouldn't be a virgin that, was fully human, what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Then it makes sense that he had to wipe that out.
Right.
But the other thing that I was thinking, and I don't know why or not, because I can't remember, gatherings, didn't they in the gatherings, the men or the demons said, let us go on the pigs, because they didn't want to go on the abyss, did they?
It's the exact verse I'm about to read next. Yeah, because it says, number 9, demons are fearful of being sent to the abyss. And because I wanted to point out, it's like we can point to those ones in Genesis that were sent, but it also likes to point out that there were also demons who were sent to hell throughout time. And again, like Cindy was referencing, it was the man who was possessed where he says, I am legion. So it was the man in the tomb or in the graveyard. That's Luke 8. So that's Luke 8. Yeah, so Jesus gets out there and he says, what is your name? Jesus asked him and he says, Legion. They said, because many demons have entered me, and they begged him, being Jesus, not to banish them to the abyss. There's that word again, the bottomless pit. So they were scared because what that points out, the demons don't want to go there. They want to be free to do their wickedness. So they must have known that God was in the habit of sending demons down there. And so it's not just the Genesis 6 demons down there, but others that God, on his own will and discretion, would through the ages send them to the abyss as a holding place to keep them because they were so vile until the final judgment of being thrown into the lake of fire. And then so that leads us to what happens to Satan? The key is given to him. And what is it when we see a key, number 10? A key is going to be a reference to authority in Scripture. If you have the ability to open a door, you have the authority to open the door. You're the one who has that power. And so the key to the abyss was given to him to open the shaft and let all the demons out. So not only do you not have demons in the sky, and you have all the demons on the earth, but now the demons who are under the earth, who are in hell, they're going to come out. So number 11, Satan is given temporal authority. And we know that's temporal because we also see later on in Revelation, another angel is given the same key to bring out all of the demons and Satan out for the eternal punishment, the lake of fire punishment. And so it's only a temporary authority. So one of the quotes I found to end tonight is this one. Picture what the world will be like if we were to open the doors of all the penitentiaries of earth and set free the world's most vicious and violent criminals, giving them full reign to practice their wickedness upon mankind. Something worse than that lies in store for the world. Satan, cast out of heaven, is now permitted to summon to his aid the most diabolical fiends in the abyss to act as his agents in bringing mankind to the footstool of the beast. It's gotten scary, hasn't it? I mean, just the now for people who don't have a spiritual background, they read this and they just go, "Huh, hoopla." But if we who are Christians, we recognize those first judgments, the famines, the wars, the celestial bodies, all of the earthquakes, all of the floods, all of the horrible things. We know that that's bad. But nothing is as bad as what's coming. And look, we're only on the 5th seal. How many more seals do we have? You got 2 more. And it only gets worse. And then you got 7 more bowl judgments to come. It only gets worse. It only gets worse. They still don't repent. And that's the scary part of it too. All right, any questions?
You said, we're like those people that, because you've given us this background, we see it differently. And so, on behalf of everybody here, I thank you for giving us. I mean, you've at least opened the door. We've got the videos we can watch. I really appreciate it.
And what I have found is the videos are more watched than our services on Sunday, and they're being shared by people. And so it's been really neat because people will get upset with me if I don't post it immediately on Thursday. So I've been trying to, I didn't post it last Thursday. Like, where's it at? That's because I have to edit it. I want to take a little part that I had just went on an ad lib. I want to take out, so I want to skim that out. But no, it's fun to know. But again, it's not fun. It's not fun. And we don't want, and we teach this, and the reason we have the spiritual mindset is because we don't want others to experience it either. We don't want them to experience it. Even though they don't fear it, we fear it for them, and that should motivate us to share the gospel. What are you going to say, Lewis?
There's a physical place that is, I think it's symbolic. I don't think it's the Jews consider the gates of hell. So up way up north in Dan.
Yeah.
And they have the pagan temples up there. And but it was, I think it's where Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I guess.
That's what I heard too in studying it, is that there's a physical gates of hell. And Jesus was there when he's looking at Peter. Upon this rock will build the church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Everyone who was in that circle of disciples at that point in time knew the terminology and knew the reference to that physical place. Any other questions?
Demons having access to God, as well as Satan. I think you said they have access. Why do you think? Is that because is God giving them an opportunity to repent?
No.
It's not. They just have. What do you think? Why is it that the demons have access to God?
They're still his messengers. They still have a purpose for God. They are still under his authority. They just have been cast out of the blessedness, that which is heaven, and His presence. Not certain. Well, see, the harder thing that we have to grasp, which our minds have a hard time grasping in regards to angels, is they're not human. And because they're not human, or they're not a part of this creation that we are, like humans, they are a completely different being. And so their relationship with God is different than our relationship with Him. And so we can't think in terms of the way we relate to God, the way angels relate to God. Because the one thing we know about angels, there is no redemption for angels. The- yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah, that's the reason why I like the demon. Jesus would forbid the demons to speak about Him whenever He started His healing ministries, when He started preaching here on earth, because the demons knew who He was, and He would make the demons silent so that they wouldn't proclaim Him. They would know Him, and where it gets a little bit weird for me in my mind, I still haven't quite figured out a way of defining it, is that they would know Christ in heaven, but Satan still had to test Jesus on earth. So there's some sort of distinction that Satan couldn't pick up, that angels couldn't tell for certain, because, the best example is like when Jesus was in the wilderness, He came across more as a human than He did God. That's the reason why Satan wanted Him to do miraculous things to prove that He was God, that He was the one that was worshipped in heaven. So, yeah, they knew, but then they didn't know Him, but they know Him. And I don't have a good way of describing it.
I don't know. You make it sound like when you say that, it makes me think, well, God included that in the Bible for us. I don't know. And then the other thing that you said, answering Bob's question, one of the reformers, Luther or Calvin, said that the devil is God's devil. And so the fact that these devils or demons are messengers, that's the way God mets out His wrath, or one way that He can met out His wrath.
Yeah, God can use the ungodly for righteousness.
Does it all the time. So.
You're going to say, Cindy?
What's that scripture where it says, you say you believe, but the demons believe, and what's that go on with?
And they fear, they tremble. It's like, that's when it's like, I know who Paul is. I know Paul is, I don't know who you are. Yeah, the demons tremble. The demons tremble. Any other questions? If not, we're a little late, so let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for our time.